Hey y'all, Lila with Miss Kiss Creations. Welcome back to my channel. Today's Tumbler tutorial, I'm going to show you how I created these paint shimmered tumblers. I guess that's what I'm going to call them. They're paint and there's shimmer on them and there's a little bit of glitter. But like always, all of my materials will be listed in my description below, including some direct links and coupon codes. And don't forget to follow me on all of my socials, Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. And with all that being said, let's go ahead and get started with this tutorial. Okay, so I'm actually going to do two tumblers as you saw in the last clip, and both tumblers I have sanded them down with a 180 grit sanding block, and then I wiped them down with 91% alcohol. I then spray painted the tumblers with my white spray paint. If you don't have white spray paint, you can always use some acrylic paint or any paint you have on hand. And these are ready to go once they are dried. I am using my Wet n Wild paint brushes. Well, they're makeup brushes, but I use them as paint brushes. These work great for my pop of color paints that I'm going to be placing on these tumblers. If you don't have these paint brushes, you can always either purchase them or you can always go to Amazon and just purchase other paint brushes you have on hand. I'm going to do the Chasing Sunshine or the orange tumbler first. These are the list of the pop of color paints that I am using for this tumbler. I wanted a very bright, fun, summery tumbler, so I use these paints. And all I'm going to do is open all of my paint bottles, and I'm just going to use separate paint brushes and just paint each color in a diagonal swirl angle, if that's a thing. So again, I'm just placing each color one by one on the tumbler. Now this was just basically a vision for this tumbler. So this was my first like paint swirl tumbler. So I really didn't know how this was going to look. So this first one, the orange one, isn't really like my favorite one, I guess. Obviously I draw more towards purple, but I was kind of more like skeptical with the first one. The second one, you'll see it does get a lot easier. So don't overthink this. You can use any size paintbrush you like. You can use how many colors you like, and you can place them at any angle you like. So if you don't want like the swirl effect, you can place these colors up and down, or you can place them diagonal on the, not diagonal, like left to right on the tumbler. So all I'm doing is, you'll see I'm applying all these colors on the tumbler one by one. I decided to go in with a different brush and kind of like brush those hard lines away, and you can see I'm trying to soften them. I really didn't like doing this, so I went back to using my Wet n Wild makeup brushes and to apply that last color on the tumbler. And then I just took a brush and I just kind of combined those colors together. So again, I'm using this 1-inch paintbrush, but you'll see the next tumbler, it does get a lot easier. And my main focus was to just blur those lines. I wanted that nice flowy, diagonal, swirly effect on this tumbler. And I wanted those colors to really mix, but not mix too much. I still wanted you to be able to see these colors on the tumbler, but I still wanted like a nice, not as harsh mix, if that makes sense. And then I just applied whatever paint on the bottom, just to the bottom, just to make it fun and just kind of fill that in with all the extra paint. So again, this was the first time me doing this style tumbler, and I was kind of just playing around with it. I really didn't know what to really do, but I thought, hey, let me try to use another paintbrush and smooth these lines together. So that's exactly what I did. So you'll see this is whenever that art really takes over and it really starts looking beautiful. I love these colors together. It's so summertimey, and you'll see I just took that paintbrush. I started from the bottom and I went all the way to the top. As I'm swirling my tumbler, I'm going in the same direction and I'm just mixing all those colors together. Not too much because I still want a separated tumbler, but look how beautiful that is. So I put that to the side, and then I'm going to start on my purple and blue tumbler. And again, I chose my pop of color paints, and this is a list of all the colors I'll be using for this tumbler. And again, all of these colors will be listed in my description below. This is pop of color paints. These are from CCDIY or Counterculture. I love these paints, and I always use them with my Wet n Wild makeup brushes. Y'all know I love me some purple, so I couldn't not do this style tumbler and not like try it in like a purple color scheme. So that's why I chose these colors, and I really just chose whatever I had on hand that I felt looked the best. So you'll see that this tumbler was a little bit easier for me, I should say. I kind of had the hang of it. It doesn't look too hard, and honestly, it really isn't hard. So this is why this tumbler is made for beginners, because I think as a beginner, you're able to just paint some lines on a tumbler, some paint on a tumbler, and kind of swirl them together. And once you do it, I know it's going to look gorgeous. So I started with actually applying a thinner coat of my paint. The paint that I added on the orange tumbler, I added a little bit too much, I noticed, so I wanted to do maybe thinner strokes to not waste paint, and so that tumbler can dry a little quicker. So all I did was I added all these colors to the tumbler. I used different brushes because I didn't want to double dip on my paint and mix these colors inside of each other. And if you don't know, I use the same brushes. I just wash them out with water, and then I'm applying this paint with a damp paintbrush. So do keep that in mind. These paints go on great whenever you do use a damp paintbrush. So then I used my my last paintbrush. I think that one was a little crusty, so I don't think I used that one. Yeah, that's a crusty one. I had to throw that one to the side. So I just took another paintbrush. You'll see I didn't like that one. I tried, but I didn't like it. I took another paintbrush and I just did what I did on the other one. So I started from the bottom, I went all the way to the top, I swirled the tumbler with the paint still on the brush, not worrying if like the light purple went to the dark purple or the blues, and I just made those hard lines a little bit more soft. And oh, I absolutely love this tumbler. I wanted to keep it, but I know I have to sell it. So it's just as easy as that. And then I just took the rest of that paint, and you'll see I just did the bottom the same way as I did the bottom of the other one. So what I did after I completed this, obviously that orange one is already drying. I just let them dry. It took about 30 to maybe 45 minutes to be completely dried. So make sure before moving on to the next step, which is epoxying your tumbler, make sure your paint is completely dry. If you think it's not dry, wait another 20 minutes because epoxy does not do well with wet surfaces. So make sure it's completely dried before moving on to the next step. One of the many great things about these tumblers are once you're finished with this step, you just let these tumblers dry. You do not have to seal these with anything. We're going to let them dry, let them air dry, and then we're going to move on with epoxying our tumbler. I'm not gonna lie, once these things were dry, these were so gorgeous, and I just wanted to keep them like so, but of course I had some glitter and some mica powder on hand, so why not just try to add some mica powder or glitter? But if you don't have these on hand, these look beautiful without any shimmer. So I am using all of these materials. I'm using glitter from Glitter Heart Co, and then I'm using Arteza mica powders. What I did was I first mixed my epoxy, and then after I mixed it, I added my mica powders and my glitter. So make sure you're adding your mica powders and glitters after your epoxy is already mixed. So this is only going to be for my purple theme tumbler. I'm going to show you my orange theme tumbler once I finish doing this. And this is a 30-ounce tumbler. I used probably like 20 milliliters of epoxy. I didn't want to have too much. This is not going to be our final coat of epoxy. This is our first coat of epoxy. So the point of this layer was just to seal in that design and to add that shimmer. So it wasn't, like a dry surface whenever you go to add the decal. So you want that protectant epoxy layer before you apply your decal. And I just applied this all around the tumbler, and you'll see that it gives it such a beautiful shimmer, and it looks so much better in person. And then once I was finished with this, I had my second cup of epoxy to the side for my orange theme tumbler. And then I'm going to show you my Arteza mica powders for my orange theme, and then my glitter. I use the same glitter. My goal was to not cover up the design. So make sure you are keeping that in mind whenever you are adding your glitter and you're choosing your mica powder. So I actually added way too much orange. Y'all know I'm heavy-handed, so I added too much orange to this mixture, and I didn't have enough epoxy left over to add more clear epoxy into the mixture to thin out the orange, if that makes sense. You're gonna see I'm gonna dump that orange right in there. Like the champagne color was fine. Watch this, guys. That was just, that's a lot. So don't be heavy-handed like me. And if you are heavy-handed, have a little bit of epoxy left over so you can add more clear epoxy to this to make more so that orange isn't as orangey. So I added this to the tumbler and it just screamed Halloween. I was like, oh my gosh, no, I just messed up this tumbler. This is a mess. It was just, I really wanted the green to pop. I really wanted the summery vibes and like that really, really bright vibes to pop. So what I did was I added this all around the tumbler and then I started scraping off the epoxy. You'll see I'm scraping it off and I'm making this thin layer so thin. And I'm only doing that just to remove that layer of like mica powder, and it actually kind of works. So if y'all did add a little bit too much mica powder, just go ahead and scrape it off and you'll see that it'll come right off. Once your epoxy is added to your tumblers, you're going to let your tumblers spin on the cup turner for 4 hours. You're going to then turn off your cup turners and let your tumblers air dry or air cure for another 20 hours. You want a complete curing or drying time of at least 24 hours. Do keep in mind that your curing or drying times for your epoxy may differ depending on your brand of epoxy, your temperature of your room, and especially your humidity of your area that you're working in. So make sure you do read your epoxy's instructions depending on your epoxy that you have. And once these are cured, we're going to move on to our next step. And now that these tumblers are cured, I'm taking my X-Acto knife and I just clean up my rim of my tumbler. This just removes all of the excess epoxy that may have been placed on the rim. A lot of people wait to the last step to do this, or the last step of epoxy to do this, but I like to do this after every epoxy step because it is harder as the epoxy cures more and as you layer more epoxy onto the tumbler to like cut off the epoxy pieces. So after I finish with X-Acto knifing, I take my 180 grit sanding block and I sand on the rim, and I am sanding away the tiniest bit of epoxy in design just to expose the tiniest bits of my stainless steel to get a nice seal whenever I do my final coat of epoxy. And then I take a 220 grit sanding block and I sand this tumbler very lightly. Honestly, these tumblers really didn't need to be sanded too much, so this was a very light, quick sanding, and they were already so smooth and so beautiful. Once I was finished sanding my tumbler, I took my 91% alcohol and I wiped around the entire tumblers, and after they are nice and dry, we're going to go in and add our decals. I'm using my cup cradle from Imagination 3D. I will have that cup cradle listed in my description below with a coupon link. Now for this purple swirl tumbler, I wanted a nice flowy, fun little saying. So be beautiful, spelled beautiful, you know, B-U. And I just found this on Creative Fabrica, I believe, or maybe I made it. I think it was Creative Fabrica. So I found it on Creative Fabrica and I wanted the U to really stick out. So I just cut the decal twice and I kept the U in a different color, and then I placed the U on the B to full part. So I ended up kind of making my own because I think the Creative Fabrica one was like one image, I think, but I will also have Creative Fabrica linked in my description below as well with a coupon code. So basically I just added the U into the decal, and there's my head, sorry. And then I just placed that decal in a diagonal angle. Well, when I placed that on my tumbler, I had a different vision in my head. I thought that U would really just pop and stand out. Looking back, I probably should have used like hot pink because I placed it on a purple background. So I placed it down and I realized I really don't like this. So I kept the U of the blue, and instead of doing like a pink U, I just kept the blue, and I just made it blue with the slightest bit of purple offset for the U. So it sticks out a little bit, but yeah, it worked out. I mean, I don't know, sometimes you have a vision and you're like, oh, this is gonna look great, and And I don't know, it's just do better than me, okay? This is just an inspiration. I'm sure whenever you create yours is gonna look beautiful. And then once I had my purple tumbler squared away, I went in with my orange one, and I really, really like this decal. It says Chasing Sunshine, and this file is also found on Creative Fabrica. It's kind of like a, not an offset, but one of those, like how the words like go into each other. I really like those. So I just placed that on like an area where there wasn't too much orange, because I know the chasing kind of blended. In the video, it looks like the chasing blends really, really much, but it's really not that bad in person. So I just made the sunshine yellow because it's sunshine, and then I just removed it. And again, this was found on Creative Fabrica. I'll have that all linked in my description. Once these decals were placed on the tumbler, I go in with my quick coat from CCDIY. This is a urethane sealer, and I use this on every single decal that I placed on my tumbler. What this does is this allows those decals on vinyl to really stick to the tumbler, so when you go to epoxy, you don't have to worry about those decals lifting. So once I place this on the tumbler, and I always only have to use a little bit, even though I'm always heavy-handed and I use a lot, you're going to allow this to dry for like 15 to 20 minutes, depending on how much you place on your decals. And once that's dried, we're going to go in with our epoxy. So another great thing about this tumbler, or these tumblers, is you didn't really add, or I didn't really add a lot of glitter. So if you want, you can add just one thick coat of epoxy and be done. I like to add 2 coats of epoxy, so I really like to add a thin coat of epoxy, let it cure, and then add the second coat of epoxy and let it cure, just to make sure it's completely locked in. But if you're like in a hurry and you want to like gift this, or if this is for you, then you can always add a thicker coat of epoxy and just make sure that you're covering that decal, because you don't really have to worry about this epoxy being too thick. I love a thin tumbler. I love the thin designs. They just look so much better than like a bulky tumbler. So it's really up to you. For my purple tumbler, which is a 30-ounce tumbler, I think I used like 25 milliliters of epoxy. I let it cure, and then I put another like 15 over. For my orange tumbler, which is my 20-ounce tumbler, I used probably 20 milliliters of epoxy, let that cure, and then I put another probably 15 milliliters of epoxy over. It's really up to you, however you like, but again, I like the 2 coats, and then making sure that it's completely sealed. And then you just let those spin on the cup turner, you let them cure, and then we're going to go on with our final coat, our final step, which is cleaning up the rim. Again, I'm using my X-Acto knife. I'm just X-Acto knifing all the excess epoxy. And then I always wash my tumbler inside and out with my Dawn dish soap, and I make sure to wash it with a clean paper towel, again inside and out, to make sure that I removed any of that stuff that may have been stuck to the tumbler. And once you're finished cleaning up your tumblers are ready to go. And look how gorgeous and just simply beautiful these tumblers are. Really have fun with these. Use as many colors as you like, as many glitters as you like. These are just so cute. Thank y'all so much for watching this video. And if you guys did enjoy this video, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more Tumbler and craft videos. And please be sure to follow me on my socials. I'm trying to get my TikTok up. So guys, go to TikTok, follow my channel, Miss Kish Creations. Thanks y'all so much for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.